Hi, welcome to Dark Discussions. It's me, Ella, and I'm here with Lama from Studio N in the Wanzabil in Dubai to talk about the lighting design behind the One offices. Lovely. Thank you for inviting us here. It's stunning.
Well, it is exciting. Actually, it's one of our beautiful projects over the past year, and it's a unique one. We do a lot of workspaces, but this one had a very unique and a very special approach, which makes it stand out, not only because it's in One Zabil, which is the most iconic tower in Dubai, but also the whole interior concept behind it, which is super exciting.
Well, how about you start off by telling us how you got involved in this amazing project?
So we work a lot with JLL and a lot with them as project manager, but also their interior design team. So given that we sort of specialize a lot in the workspace lighting design, they approached us with this concept saying, we would like you to come on board and work with us on this very unique project that, One Zabil are creating into their tower. Of course, we can't say no. It's an interesting opportunity. So we jumped on board, and this is where the whole discussion started. Where they're going with their vision, what's the client expecting from this ultra luxury corporate workspace, I would say, because they're targeting very high-end corporations and companies who are looking for a workspace that is fitted out, that is flexible, that has all the services, and it sits in quite a prime location in Dubai.
So can you start off walking me through your initial vision when you was taken to the office? What was your ideas and how did that compare to the brief that your client gave you?
So from day one, we knew this needed to be an ultra luxury hospitality feel in the public spaces, but we needed also to have a flexible approach in the suites because this is a short, long-term lease for corporations to come and rent their space here. So technically, whatever solution we put in the ceiling should have bear in mind that the furniture layout will change, the client preferences will change. And this is where, we needed to think of a very flexible, a lightweight lighting solution that would accommodate to the different clientele within the space.
How did the surrounding developments, so it's such as the urban resort, there's Michelin star restaurants, how did that affect the design?
The minute you walk into the space, and we've walked together through the lobby, it just speaks elegance. And that sort of set the bar high of, thinking of, minimalism, thinking of finesse detail, thinking of, layers of light in the most intricate ways. And it sort of translates through the whole experience. The minute you walk through the lobby, you take, left lobby, you come up. It's a seamless transition between the spaces. And I think because the client himself, they were heavily involved in the process because they had a vision. They wanted to speak luxury. They wanted to give that ultra, special experience to whoever visits their tower, regardless they're going for an F&B or they're coming for the offices or any of the venues within the space. So they wanted to give that impression of luxury, of high-end services. And this is where you see the seamlessness between the entrance and here. Although they're completely different designs in terms of ID, but at the same time, there's a tying connection and a language between.
So how do you balance that luxurious hospitality feel in a workplace? Because at the end of the day, it's still somewhere to come and...
Yeah, it's true. We hear, especially in this office, and I think the modern, I'm going to call them post-pandemic offices, they took a huge turn into bringing home to your workspace and bringing that huge sense of luxury and, let's say, communal spaces or casual spaces. And this is where, it's not only here, we see it a lot in all offices that we've been working on. There's a lot of hospitality flair and feel within the space. A lot of the casual meeting rooms, the cafe, all of, these facilities. And this is where, we need to curate that transition because yes, when you're sitting on your desk, you do need technical lighting, you need controlled glare, you need to have proper optics that gives you comfort because you're sitting there probably for 8-9 hours a day. And this is where, how do you connect seamlessly between, which is a bit contrasty, versus, the workspace, which is a little bit more on the uniform side of things and more into the, output. It's just understanding the circulation and understanding the functionality between the spaces and then tie in the circulation, which are the corridors. And you can sense, like when you go to the lobby and then you walk in through the circulation, you you start feeling that transition a little bit. And then once you go to the suites, and we'll take a walk and you'll see, you would feel that you'd still have that sense of functionality, but you still have the aesthetics.
So you said the client had a very clear vision in the beginning, but did it change at all throughout the project? And how did that change the lighting?
You know, the design process is not a very rigid element. You know, once everybody sits around the table and everybody contributes with their expertise, whether it's the client from their initial vision, or the ID team, or us, or even the MEP or acoustic people, when we come and congregate around a table and start discussing how can we bring this vision to life, I wouldn't say changed, but there'll be developments of where initially they started and where we got to towards the end. We're still having the core vision there, but there has been evolvement and development throughout the way.
So the double height lobby and the theatrical staircase is such a stunning and like key element of the design.
Isn't it beautiful?
I know.
I love it.
Can you go into detail about that? Tell us everything.
That was the wow factor. And this was, you know, we wanted to bring the 5-star hotel feel into the space, and the interior designers, you know, that first impression. And this is where, you know, we started playing with this as we walk around. You'll see we're integrating lights in the steps, and it played so well because the finishes of the staircase, is this nice brushed bronze, so it's kind of bouncing the light, and you feel you're descending into a beautiful space. And we've worked so closely with Nolte Bespoke in curating this beautiful chandelier that cascades from the upper floor down, and it's so light, it's so airy, it doesn't occupy the space. On the contrary, it makes you want to go up to see how it actually, you know, develops and forms as you go up. So it started with a normal staircase, and slowly, like, just to sort of form the lobby to make the circulation nicer and sort of attract people to go to that direction. It somehow worked perfectly together between how the lighting is integrated into the details by the eye.
The bespoke piece consists of, like, I think it was 500 glass
Yes,
birds. It's
yes.
so whimsical and beautiful.
It's beautiful, yeah.
I was just curious, how do you collaborate with Nolte Bespoke in it? Is it completely their brainchild, they came up with the birds, or did you throw these ideas out and they kind of make that tangible?
Yeah, they're an excellent team, and we work a lot with the Nolte Bespoke team. Usually how it goes, once we have a brief with the interior designs, I would sort of envision we want something light, we want something airy, or we want something maybe grand or bulky, or so it's just an initial, let's say, abstract of how they envision the element of that chandelier. And we go back and we sit with Alex and his team and say, okay, guys, this is the vision, play with it and come back with ideas. And they're fantastic. They come with like 4 or 5 different ideas. This is what we could do, this is how we do it. And instantly, this was their first option, and it immediately went through, because once they saw how the staircase sort of, you know, cascades up, and they're like, that's it. You know, you want something light. You don't want something to overtake, but at the same time, it just draws your eyes to the upper floor.
So how did you use lighting to highlight the joinery and the different materials throughout the space?
Yeah, I think what makes a space feel bigger and makes the space feel 3-dimensional, and it's so important. And as you can see, there's a lot of finishes, a lot of expensive materials that just want to celebrate itself, you know. And this is where trying to create these layers of light, to expand the space and at the same time give it some dimensions and depth. It was so important for us to understand what would go into the shelves, what sort of the backing, what sort of the colors, to sort of work out what would be the best way to integrate lighting into the joinery, to focus onto the elements, or, you know, the sort of contrast that goes into each and every, I would say, wall or feature joinery built up.
So in the workplace suites, the lighting, the goal is to be flexible. So what sort of techniques and systems was used?
Luckily, we came across just before it was meant to be, the stars were aligned. Just before, you know, we jumped on board this project, we started playing around with the plug and play crayon system. Yeah, and funny enough, for the longest time, this project was called Plug and Play, because the concept of those flexible suites is that you have your grid in the ceiling, and it's a very slick, very minimal linears with little spots on it, and you can plug and play depends on the furniture layout. We wanted something very light and very minimal and sleek. And it just came across that this was the solution that was meant to be for this project, and it worked so well. It looks so beautiful, and it gives a huge level of flexibility, and it's very user friendly. You don't need to call a technician or the manufacturer to come and like play with it. You just understand what's your layout and basically just aim your light and plug it around to suit the new layout within the suite.
Just think about workplace designs and stuff, and you were talking about COVID. A lot of people's work routines are different now. Like some people are now starting later in the afternoon and then finish late. Is it the same here? And was that part of the considerations of flexibility, or in Dubai is it very like 9 to 5?
Yeah, we got right on it.
Yeah,
we didn't. You guys were so lucky back in the UK. You were spoiled. No, yeah. we got right on it, and way early. So there's a lot of consideration into, let's say, social spaces and collaboration spaces and agile spaces. That became a heavy approach, and we've started seeing more of it, and a lot of well-being and health and a lot of these things they're pushing the boundaries of what is being integrated into the offices. We're seeing from simply having showers, so now we have yoga rooms and gyms, to having a massage room, a nap pod.
Yeah.
So all of these things for us post COVID, which were ultra luxury services, they became almost a norm in every other workspace that we work on. And I think that was I would say the bounce back and the recovery from what we've suffered through lockdown, is just the openness and the facilities, and because people got used to being at home, and now I think that was the teaser to bring them back to the office. Like you're giving you a feel of home into the office, and this is where lighting played a very, very important element. Like you see here, the color temperatures quite normal, like warmer than what would you see in the offices, because it's more casual, it's more relaxed. So you don't want very bright or very cool color temperature, what we would normally specify for a desk. You want that cozy, homely feeling. Whereas if you go to the offices, they're slightly on the cooler tones, which is the more functional, keeps you awake, keeps you alerted, keeps you functional. So that was the difference that we've seen in the Middle East pretty much.
Okay. Could you tell me about the considerations that was taken for the meeting rooms and the design there? And did you have to consider like video calls and so forth?
Yeah, VC calls now have changed the game, right? Which is amazing, because you could save time on traffic, you could talk to anyone everywhere, and then you're there in your office. But that also plays a role into how you're using the space. We need to understand how the space is being used, and basically we work out the scenes. And this is where it takes us back to having the right layers of lighting. It's so important. That gives you that flexibility to change, the feel within a space and the usability of the space, depending on what you need. Like a meeting room, you could do a VC in a meeting room, you could do a formal meeting, you could do a collaboration meeting, a presentation on a screen. So all of these functionalities, you would have a different scene that is sort of help or for that task. So if you're having a VC, that means you've got to have a lot of brightness, backdrop lighting, vertical illumination, facial illumination. So the other people on the other screen, that's bright and if you want to think about it that way. And if you're doing a presentation, for example, on the screen, you want your focal point to be the presentation, the screen. So you need to dim light the background to have your focal point, the screen. And that sort of flexibility within a space.
So what were the biggest challenges that came with lighting the office?
I think the challenges, pretty much, if you want to think about it, time is always of the essence. Everybody wants things yesterday, but we forget that manufacturers need time to produce and ship, etc. So that was a bit of a challenge. At some point, the budget was a challenge, so we needed to sort of invest more money on the key common spaces and then the suites, and then sort of try to work out a more budget-friendly with the other circulation, which are pretty much as secondary spaces. And this is where, like, a lot of the circulations in the corridors here, we've got to rethink the approach to sort of trim down the budget a little bit. So it was pretty much time and money, but in not excessive challenges, if you want to put it that way. And then coordination is always the key success, right? And if people are not coordinating with the contractor as early as possible, this is where hiccups potentially happen. You know, we always try to be on site, even if we don't have a post contract, we'll come for a visitor too, just to sort of make sure everybody understands what's happening on the drawings. And then there are a few things we could have done better in some of the installations, but that was a tiny miscoordinations due to the fast speed of the project.
And there's also some beautiful natural lighting within the space as well. So how do you ensure that the lighting, the artificial lighting and the natural lighting complement throughout this project?
The magic of controls and having layers of lighting as well. So if you see walking from the lobby where we came, which has a lot of natural light versus here, you didn't feel the massive transition. But if you go look at the installed lighting within that space, you would see that it's quite dimmed in comparison to this one. And that's sort of to balance, because usually what we recommend, we always have daylight sensors and we program the space within that, because huge towers, usually you've got the core, which hardly have any natural light, and you've got huge glazing, especially for the skyscrapers. You've got a lot of natural light, especially in Dubai, where we're a sunny city, you know, 24/7 around the year. So this is where, you know, we need to really work out with how we're harvesting the natural light, and how would that work in contrast with areas that are closer to the core of the tower that does not get a lot of natural light, and seamlessly the light will balance based on the sensors to give you that, you know, seamless transition as you walk in from closer to the glazing to the you know, to the inner areas.
Amazing. So let's go back to the beautiful installation down there. Was the process of that pretty seamless? Was there any obstacles, structural constraints, or was it easy peasy?
Nothing is easy these days. Look, it wasn't impossible. It was just a matter of, you know, finessing the final details, of course, you know, and coming together how this sculpture gonna look, because this is not just lighting, it's a sculpture. It's an artisan sculpture, and then it has lighting integrated just to give it the little dapple, you know, twinkle. But it's just a matter of agreeing on the final details. Nolty Bespoke kept a couple of samples for the finishes, just for everybody to feel them, touch them, see how they feel about it. It wasn't a complicated process, but of course it took a time, because when you're creating a piece of art, you need to take your time to create it properly.
Could you just go into a bit of detail on how the light is integrated into the installation?
So once you walk over there, you'll see. So we've got a ceiling rose, like a plate in the ceiling that has very tiny downlight, okay? And then you've got these glass tempered birds. And as the light sort of shine on them, they kind of catch and scatter the light differently. They're really small miniature downlights. Very simple, very basic, very seamless, and they just give enough focused light through the, you know, the sculpture, and it just gives a little twinkle.
So how have you talked to any of the occupants or had any feedback on how they've been feeling working in this space?
Not the occupants themselves, because we haven't had the opportunity to face any of them, but we've done several walks around with a lot of people, like a lot of different people from the client side, and it was a very positive feedback. Like, they're happy. They were looking forward to see how would that actually work, in the sense of, you know, reshaping the light based on the furniture. It'll be interesting to know if they've experienced that or they've done that ever since we've handed over the project.
How do you hope that they feel? Was that something that was in your mind throughout the
I would hope that concept of plug and play really applies, as easy as it gets, because when you have the right lighting in your office, this is when everything works perfectly, and the system is quite simple and direct, and it's just a matter of really understanding that how to configure things around. Like, if you shift your table here, focus it on the table, and we've trained actually some of the staffs here of how should that work, just in case anyone come and say, like, you know, I don't want to have general desks. I don't know, I'm going to have a U-shaped one desk. It could happen. So,
well, that sort of answered my next question. I was going to say, are there any such details in the lighting that you really hope people notice? Some people who lighting often just goes over people's heads, but when that's
a tricky one. Yeah, especially in a workspace. In a workplace, we all use screens, and the last thing you want is a spot or a downlight shining into your screen and just bouncing into your face the whole time. and having a direct light right above your head, so every time you're on a call you look 10 years older because you've got shadows casting your face because of the direction of the light. The light is meant to focus on the works or the task surfaces, which is in the desk or the table. You're not meant to have flooded light everywhere. And if once you have the control light aimed in the right direction and not angled in your eye and not right above your head or not right behind you towards your screen, it's very basic. Light is simple if you know how to manage it.
Yeah. Well, let's hope that they notice that they look good in this light.
I hope so.
So, final question. So, do you have a favorite part of this process, of this project, that you really enjoyed?
I think concept stage is always the most exciting part,
Yeah.
because this is where all the creativity comes out, and we tend to play with the impossible, if you think about it, the possibilities. Yeah, and there's a huge level of education which we enjoy, because you come in as the expert and you bring in all these ideas, and it's fascinating sometimes the reaction that we get. Some are negative, some are positive, but the reaction of like, oh, this could work that way. And when people believe in the vision, what we're putting forward, and then they see it come to life, that's for us, that's the most exciting part.
Okay, I said final question, but I've just thought of one more. For the closing question, I thought perhaps, what would be your top tip in lighting a workplace?
Yeah, understand who works in the space. Understand their functionality, their work hours. Understand that lighting layers are very important, and high contrast in a workspace is painful sometimes. So even if you have casual spaces, you need to understand how to transition from the communal general spaces into the workstations, because having sharp contrast in the transition can be tiring over time. A lot of times, we get headaches, we get anxious, we get tired, and we don't know what's the reason, and lighting will be the reason. Neurodiversity is becoming a huge topic in the lighting industry, and artificial lighting is a big factor in it, and this is where we have to be mindful of the quality of light, of the layers of the light. Having layers of light is so important. It helps you aid the space. Once you understand how vertical illumination work within a space, it will help you expand or compress the space and give comfort within that area. Having controls is a plus if you can, and also understanding that it's all about the quality of light.
Right, thank
Cool.
you.
Thank you.
That was wonderful.
Thanks.
So exciting.